You know what day it is. That's right, Mock Draft Monday, which means another Mock Draft post-combine edition. A lot of guys had very awesome performances, maybe boosting their stock a little bit. As we know, the combine doesn't really do a whole ton athletically for those guys at the top, but it could certainly elevate someone in those later rounds up a little bit. So always really important to get the medical stuff done. Apparently, Michael Penix and Leatu Latsu with big medical concerns came out pretty good. And then, of course, we hear about how guys interview down the line as well. But a lot of players tested really, really well. Super fun. And if you're interested in Falcons franchise, the offseason will be streamed tonight on Twitch at 8 Central. That's 9 Eastern Time, twitch.tv/Bengal. Video uploaded tomorrow. So if you can't make it, no worries. But I am taking some liberties today. Got a lot of trades. And I am mixing up the top 3. Now, what I will say, what is the point if you're doing what you think will not happen? Well, I don't know everything, obviously, and there are a number of different things that could happen. So I will tell you, for maybe the first time in a while, the first 3 picks in a row will not be quarterbacks in this mock draft. I do think that's the likelihood, but I also recognize there's a world where that doesn't happen, and we're going to experiment with that today. So without further ado, of course, I am starting with Caleb Williams. I know the Bears fans want me to try out with what if Justin Fields is retained. I don't think he will be. I know I said I'm mixing it up, and I will be, but not at number 1 and not at number 2 either. I think Drake May is going to be the second overall pick to the Commanders. These are 2 very, very good quarterback prospects. I do think there's a bit of a drop-off prospect-wise to Jaden Daniels, and then I think there's another, maybe even a more significant drop-off down to J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix and Michael Penix, if you want to categorize that as another tier. But I am, for that reason, going to not be taking Jaden Daniels here at number 3, even though I think that is the likelihood right now. I'm going with Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, I've heard a number of different people's opinions on this, which is that why would the Patriots take a QB if the situation is not good enough for a QB to go into there? And it's very simple, actually. If you're picking at number 3, the reason why you take a QB at number 3 is because you can't find one typically down the board the same way you can at the top of the draft. The top upper echelon QB prospects go early. You can still find a really good receiver or offensive lineman in round 2 or 3. So I do think it's going to be a quarterback, but we're going to experiment with the possibility that maybe it's not. Marvin Harrison Jr. ends up being the 3rd overall pick. And now the Cardinals are sitting at number 4. A very familiar spot if you look at what happened last year. And I think, again, Monty Osenforth, the GM of the Cardinals, will make the decision to trade down as a team tries to move up for a quarterback. We've heard the Giants are involved in conversations to potentially move up. We've heard, all about the Vikings and the Broncos and the Raiders potentially. Falcons all being in the market for QB, and the Falcons especially also being very aggressive in acquiring a quarterback. So we're going to have a move happen. Now, it could be any one of those teams. Today, I'm going to have the Minnesota Vikings trade up from number 11. Now, the compensation would have to be significant because they would be moving all the way down from 4 to 11, whereas if you trade with the Giants or the Falcons, you're only moving down a couple of spots. Today, though, we're going to do the Falcons at number 11. It would be at least 2 first-round picks. I can't do a 2026 first-rounder as well, but that would probably be what it takes. Instead, we can do a 2nd-round pick next year and then maybe a pick swap. The Cardinals do have a number of picks, and I think they could potentially trade up from maybe 137 to 130. Not super significant, but something to kind of sweeten the deal there a little bit. But it's likely 3 total first-round picks. The pick swap from 4 to 11, and then 2 extras. That, of course, puts the Minnesota Vikings on the clock at number 4, and it's a move up for a QB. They're not doing it for any other reason. Jaden Daniels of LSU is going to be wearing the same colors as the Minnesota Vikings. Get another explosive LSU playmaker to go with Justin Jefferson. Of course, never teammates, but still kind of a fun connection nonetheless. And that puts the Chargers on the clock at number 5. Another prime trade down spot, potentially. But with Joe Alt already kind of being in that OT1 conversation and then going out and killing the combine, I think there's a decent chance that he ends up being the pick here at number 5. His agility testing was amazing for somebody as big as he is. I think he came in just under 6'9", 320 pounds, and can move like someone a fraction of the size. Former tight end, that kind of makes sense, right? But for Jim Harbaugh taking the reins of this Chargers team. You look at what worked so well at Michigan, and it was the big guys up front paving the way for a power run game, and Joe Alt could certainly help you do that. He would be sliding over to right tackle, so that might give the Chargers some pause with this, but not a bad player to get there at number 5. But there might be some growing pains as he moves over to right tackle. We saw it with Penei Sewell. He became one of the best tackles in the league. Joe Alt would hopefully be on a similar track as we get to the Giants at number 6. And I truly believe that J.J. McCarthy would be in play here, right? We've heard about J.J. McCarthy being a top 12 pick maybe or better. This is someone that could absolutely go very high in the draft. But I also kind of think about when Mac Jones got all that hype and it was said that he was going to be the 3rd overall pick to the 49ers, and then he ends up going at like 15 or so. So J.J. McCarthy is going to go higher than a lot of the public thinks. Oh, why would we trade up for J.J. McCarthy when we can get him in the 2nd round? It's like, well, you're probably not going to be able to do that. Probably not. But does that mean he's a top 10 pick? Not necessarily. I'm going to go with Malik Neighbors today. I do recognize that QB is in play for the Giants, and we're likely thinking at this point that it would be J.J. McCarthy with how the board has fallen. But I think maybe Daniel Jones under contract for 2 more years. Try to get him some playmakers. I know he's extremely limited as a player, especially coming off an injury. QB's in play, but getting a big dynamic receiver in Malik Neighbors, and not big so much in the size, he's about 6 foot, maybe 5'11 and a half, but getting a big playmaking wide receiver in Malik Neighbors could help the offense become a lot more explosive if you don't feel so good about the QB. At number 7, have the Titans on the board, and this is just going to continue to be an offensive tackle spot for me. I'm actually going to go with the right tackle from Alabama, J.C. Latham. Came in with exceptional overall size. He's, 6'6" or 6'7", maybe even 340 pounds. The weight has fluctuated. I think he came in at the combine at 340, and moved pretty well in the on-field drills, didn't run, but overall is certainly in play to be one of the first tackles off the board. I know Lance Erline considers him to be the best tackle in this entire draft. The Titans' offensive line is a disaster. Latham, of course, is a big power run blocking tackle. Looks like the old Tennessee Titans offense, but he can also pass block. Big body, very tough to move in the pass game, very tough to get behind him. He's decently quick for his size as well. I think he can definitely pass protect at a high level, and again, could be the best tackle in this draft. Titans get him at number 7. And then that opens up the Falcons at number 8 to go with Rome Odunze from Washington, one of the best players in this entire draft. Yes, the Falcons could certainly target a defensive player here, but if you're going to maybe go and get a QB in free agency the way Kirk Cousins is rumored right now, well, go get another big-time playmaker on offense to kind of solidify that group. Now you don't just have Drake London as wide receiver number 1 and then a huge drop-off to number 2. Now you get 2 bona fide wide receiver 1 type players with Kyle Pitts being a big mismatch, with Bijan Robinson who can catch it out of the backfield and be a bell cow running back, Tyler Algier as a change of pace type guy. Now the offense starts to look really, really good. I could see this being a defensive player, but the value on Odunze starts to look pretty good at number 8. And even earlier than that as well. Could be number 6 to the Giants, depending on how things shake out. At number 9, have the Chicago Bears. It's just going to continue to be the first defensive player off the board for me. It's Dallas Turner from Alabama. Tested incredibly well. That's no surprise. We knew he was a freak athlete. This is your prototypical 3-4 outside linebacker that can really get after the quarterback, is good as a run defender, and his freak athleticism gives him a super high ceiling. Long arms. I mean, everything from Dallas Turner. It looks like he was built in a lab to play 3-4 outside linebacker. He's an incredible prospect. I think goes higher in other years, but the offensive talent in this draft pushes him down the board a little bit. Number 9, I think that's still pretty good value on arguably the best defensive player in this draft. At number 10, I think I'm going to keep doing what I've been doing with the Jets, and that's Talisa Fuaga from Oregon State. Plug and play right tackle for them. There's thoughts that maybe he could move inside to guard with slightly shorter arms, but as a pass protector at Oregon State, he's shown that he can definitely do it at a high level and is probably the best run blocking offensive tackle in this class. Really, really good player. Makes sense that he's a top 10 pick here to the Jets, who absolutely need to upgrade at offensive tackle on either side. At number 11, big boost post-combine, the first one, it's Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU. I've been trying to get him up the board consistently, and I've said that I haven't been able to find a spot for him. Well, with the trade down here, as a team moves up for a quarterback, you have a wide receiver needy team that goes out and gets a wide receiver one type player in Brian Thomas Jr. Make no mistake, he is an exceptional prospect in a stacked receiver class. He may be at best wide receiver 4 as a prospect, but that doesn't mean he's not maybe a top 10 or 15 player in the entire draft. It is a stacked class. Thomas Jr. has obvious NFL size. Came in at the combine 6'3", 209 pounds, ran 4.33. Looked good in the on-field drills as well. Backing up the tape, he can get downfield. I think he led the NCAA in receiving touchdowns last season. He is an incredible player and gives Kyler Murray a big weapon downfield. Does it make sense for the Cardinals at number 4? It's a little bit early. I think the Bears would have considered Brian Thomas Jr. at number 9, but the Cardinals get him at 11. This is a probable top 15 or 20 pick. Number 11 here might be earlier than you're used to seeing him go, but it's certainly something I really love for the Cardinals offense that should look explosive next year with Kyler Murray playing a full season, hopefully. At number 12, we have J.J. McCarthy falling into the lap of the Denver Broncos. Obviously, history of winning. I'm not so on board with that. I don't really care. Like, yes, it's important to have somebody that, knows how to do things the right way and is a competitor and wants to win. But I don't think that really changes his evaluation very much as a prospect. But what you get with J.J. McCarthy is an electric, live arm, decent enough mobility, and has shown the ability to function in a pro-style offense. And when Michigan needed to make plays on 3rd and 4th down in the passing game, he did it. I don't think it's his fault that the Michigan run game was the best in the country and they could just run the ball with Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards every single time they needed to get a yard on 1st or 2nd down or 3rd down and short. When they needed to pass, J.J. McCarthy made plays. Do I think he's a bona fide first-round talent? Not exactly, but he's a good talent with a high ceiling. That means high upside. And the Broncos getting him paired up with Sean Payton, I think that's a great fit. He came in at the combine at 220. Way heavier than I think anyone expected him to weigh, but that checks off the box. I'm sure that's why he didn't run, but that checks off a big box. That's NFL size at QB compared to the about 200 pounds where we thought he would be. That's kind of where Jaden Daniels is, even though he came in a bit heavier as well. Raiders at 13. Got a lot of options here. Could go Byron Murphy out of Texas. Great player. Could go your future left tackle of the future, Olu Fashanu, but he'd be playing right tackle because you have Colton Miller. The best right tackles in Tulisa Fuaga and J.C. Latham are off the board. If you want, a big-time starting right tackle, you're looking at Amarius Mims, you're looking at Tyler Guyton, right? Maybe even Kingsley Suamataia. It's too early there. But I have a number of really good players that are sticking around on the board, and we've got a trade. The Las Vegas Raiders are trading down from 13 with the Miami Dolphins at 21. What would the Dolphins have to do to make this trade go through? I think potentially their 2nd round pick in this year's draft, right? Could be a 2nd round pick next year. But the compensation, again, it's just a lot of conjecture at this point. But I think the Dolphins, given their window, they really want to win now. We're going to make a trade up with the Las Vegas Raiders, including a 2nd round pick. Again, it could be more, it could be less. But the Dolphins have moved up to number 13 to select Georgia's Brock Bowers. Experimenting on the live streams that I was doing on Twitch and YouTube over the past Combine weekend, and Brock Bowers to the Dolphins quickly became one of my favorite fits in the draft. Is he George Kittle? Not exactly. Kittle's a way better run blocker. Bowers is good, not so great against the defensive ends, but great against DBs and linebackers. He came in, heavy enough. I think he was, over 240 pounds. That's NFL type size at tight end. Maybe, slightly light, but, he's someone that is a very different style of tight end to what you'd expect, because we can say, oh, Mike McDaniel doesn't use tight ends. Well, he hasn't had Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is someone that can catch screens. Starting to sound like the Miami offense sometimes. Someone that is amazing working after the catch, not like a traditional tight end. He's just another explosive offensive playmaker to add to this offense, and their speed. Brock Bowers certainly has a lot of speed, and he can block too. Just, again, not quite so well against the big defensive ends, but that's a challenge for any tight end. Brock Bowers is a tremendous prospect, and if he starts to sit on this board a little while, you start to worry about the Colts taking him, the Saints. Maybe you move up and get a big-time playmaker at 13. The Dolphins get a little bit crazy. Yes, they need help on the offensive line. Maybe you're able to shore that up in free agency. Maybe you bring back Connor Williams. But Brock Bowers is not there in free agency. You make a move up for him, and that could be extremely exciting for Miami. Saints at 14. Well, Olu Fashanu is how that's pronounced now. Fashanu, we got used to saying that. Olu Fashanu is the pick here at number 14. The Saints really haven't, been able to find that franchise left tackle. Ryan Ramczyk's still great at right tackle. You worry about the injury stuff with him. We'll see what happens for the rest of his career. But left tackle's in a bad spot. Olu Fashanu is in contention to be the number 1 tackle in this draft. He falls to 14. I think you turn in the card instantly. Really, really good player. Might be the best pass protecting player in this entire class. Really, really good. At number 15, have the Indianapolis Colts. And I think they're pretty happy with the way the board has fallen as well. 0 corners off the board. I think this is certainly highly likely to be a corner. Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, Nate Wiggins, all available. I think you're pretty excited about that. For me, it ends up being Quinyon Mitchell. I think he is the best overall athlete of the 3. I know Nate Wiggins ran slightly faster, 4.28. Maybe it's him. Quinyon Mitchell ran 4.33, I believe, which is still exceptionally fast. Came in at better size than Nate Wiggins overall. Longer arms. He is certainly in contention to be the first corner off the board. We know Chris Ballard loves the RAS, relative athletic score. Out of 10, you're talking about height, weight, speed, explosiveness, agility. Quinyon Mitchell checks off a lot of boxes. Could be the first corner off the board. Terrion Arnold might be the best overall, but not quite as fast, not quite as big. And that might propel a Quinyon Mitchell ahead of him to the right team. And the Indianapolis Colts are one of those teams that love the height, weight, speed athletes. Mitchell is in that category. Maybe not so much the weight, but he's got NFL CB1 type size, and they need help at corner. At number 16, I think you could consider so many different things here. Byron Murphy, absolutely. Jackson Powers Johnson, absolutely. Troy Fautanu, absolutely. I'm going to end up going with Jared Verse here, just because I think the value ends up being too good to pass on at 16. Yeah, I know their edge isn't in the worst spot ever. You've got a number of good players, but Verse kind of represents what the Seahawks usually draft in terms of size. He's 6'4", 260. That is a base starting outside linebacker for them that can actually set the edge, that is athletic enough to be a dominant pass rusher. He's already got extremely strong hands as a power rusher. Jared Verse, I think, just is a perfect fit to the Seahawks. It's one of my favorite player-to-team fits in the entire draft. Again, I know edge maybe isn't the most pressing need ever. You have a number of good players there already, or could be, young talent. But Verse, I think, is just too good to pass on. And you know what they say. You can never have enough good edge rushers. And we try to build into that strength here if we are the Seattle Seahawks. You have Jaron Reed still at defensive tackle. You have, I would say, Draymond Jones playing more of a 3 to 5 tech type role, the 3-4 defensive end. He's not an edge. Jared Verse is a great option at 3-4 outside linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks. I'm thinking about the Mike McDonald defense. It's an unbelievable fit. This is his Jadeveon Clowney type player. And at number 17, I'm going to go Terrion Arnold, cornerback out of Alabama to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Love Terrion Arnold as a player. He's arguably the number 1 corner in this draft. Solid enough athlete. People kept asking me, is his 4.5 40 going to hurt his stock? That's like average speed. It's not too slow. It's, right there. I think the average speed for the top corner is like 4.47. 4.50 is fine, especially when he plays as physical as he does, especially when he come down and defend the run. Is this the Trent Baalke guy, though? You'd think it might be Nate Wiggins, but he came in a little bit light, came in a little bit shorter than we expected, and the arms were certainly shorter than we expected. Does he meet the athletic thresholds for the Jags to take him at 17 if they're considering a corner? Maybe, maybe not. But Terrion Arnold is just a really good player that makes sense there at number 17. And then at number 18, Got the Cincinnati Bengals probably upset that Brock Bowers did not fall to them. Dolphins traded up in this scenario. Well, what do you need? Wide receiver is certainly in play. T. Higgins franchise tag, but, maybe he's not someone that ends up getting an extension. And even so, you could still use another receiver in the mix. We have Tyler Boyd scheduled to hit free agency. Wide receivers in play. Not going to take a tight end here at 18 if Bowers is off the board, I would say. So offensive tackle is then the next obvious choice. And for me, I'm looking at what the Bengals need, and it's a right tackle. Orlando Brown Jr. should be a right tackle, but he's convinced he can play left, and he's fine there, I guess. But you need a right tackle. And if you have the unbelievable size that Orlando Brown Jr. offers you, maybe you like it with Amarius Mims from Georgia. I look at the offensive tackles on the board. Fatanu, left tackle. Barton, left tackle that will probably play either guard or center. Fatanu could stick at tackle, but it could play guard. Guyton's a right tackle. Morgan's a left tackle that could move to left guard. Kingsley Suamataia is, again, kind of either side there. But the best right tackle is Amarius Mims. Has obvious NFL size. 6'7", 340, and ran really well at the combine, tweaked a hammy. We knew the athleticism was already crazy. I'm not really too concerned about that. It's just whether or not he can stay healthy. That's the big thing. 8 starts at Georgia, something like that, maybe 9. But he looked amazing in those starts. If he can stay healthy, which is a big if, might push him down the board a bit, he has the potential to be one of the best right tackles in the NFL. You get him here at 18. That's unreal value if you can develop him. At number 19, have the LA Rams. And this, for me, this ends up being Nate Wiggins. Now, he had a very interesting combine week. Came in at 173 with shorter arms and height than you'd expect. Because he was a guy that, looked, with like he had long arms and was tall on tape. Was listed taller and heavier. Came in at 173 pounds. Was listed at 185. People are like, why does that matter? I kept getting so many of those responses on Twitter. Why would this hurt the draft stock of Nate Wiggins? Well, he's already not somebody who comes up and defends the run very well at all. And now that he's going from, listed at 185 to 173, it's real thin for a corner. I think it matters a little bit less at receiver. But for a corner, you have to be physical, especially as a run defender. Why not just run at his side all day long if you know you can get away with it, someone that's not going to be able to make the play? I think it's a fair criticism. We can't just say that because this guy ran 4.28, he's the freak corner that should be a top 10 pick. I like him as a player, and I don't care so much about run defending if it's average or maybe even slightly below average. I care about covering more than anything else, but you have to be able to do it at some level, and it really brings up a ton of question marks about whether or not he's going to be able to do that in the NFL. You can always put on weight. You can say that, and then a lot of guys come up to the NFL and they don't. Like, you think Clemson didn't think that maybe Nate Wiggins should be heavier and get him on it's a Clemson meal plan, right? Like, they're going to have these guys in shape. Look at Isaiah Simmons. Does it look like he ever missed a meal? Guy was cut like a Greek god. Nate Wiggins, who knows if his frame can really support a lot more weight. Anyway, you think about some of these concerns. Again, I really like him as a player. I think maybe him running a 4.28 solidifies himself as a top 20 pick. But you wonder about those things, and apparently he didn't interview that well either. So I wonder what his range is going to be. I wonder if he's going to fall on draft night or get super elevated because he is a freak athlete. We wonder, and I wonder, and we'll see. At number 20, got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to go Troy Fautanu here. I think this fit ends up being fantastic because Broderick Jones has shown that he can be a really solid player at right tackle. Super young. Well, left tackle's a need. Center obviously is a need as well. But left tackle's a need. And if you think Troy Fautanu can stick at left tackle, which the tape was really good, and the arms came in at over 34 inches, that's very good. You thought maybe they'd be a little bit shorter, maybe moves inside the guard. Over 34 inches checks a huge box. Fautanu can be a starting left tackle for the Steelers. Maybe look better than any offensive lineman in the combine drills as well. This is somebody that's probably going to end up being a top 20 pick, and this might be his floor. This might be as low as he can go, and he gets to the Steelers at 20. Really thought about it to the Rams at 19. Really thought about it to the Jags at 17. Definitely in play for Seattle. Fautanu is a really great player. Steelers are getting a good one. And then at number 21, I think you're getting the player you might have taken at number 13 anyway. The Raiders get Byron Murphy the second out of Texas. Get your horns up. Hook him, of course. Murphy's an incredible player. He's a little short, 6 foot, 6'1". Came in at 298, 297 pounds at the combine. Tested really well. We know the trenches is a leverage game. Byron Murphy does that better than anyone. Gets low. Is extremely strong, but also has incredible bursts as a pass rusher. And if you have struggled getting to the quarterback, Byron Murphy's going to help that. Make more one-on-ones for Max Crosby. Make more one-on-ones for, Tyree Wilson. He opens things up. You need a big-time playmaker on the interior. Byron Murphy is it. And then you get to the Eagles at 22. And this is one of the most interesting spots in the draft for me because it's easy to go Jackson Powers Johnson here at center after Jason Kelce retired today. I don't know that that's going to happen. You drafted Cam Jurgens, and I think that's your center of the future. Jackson Powers Johnson could be, or he could be drafted as a guard here and just play guard right away. Obviously, you have Landon Dickerson, but maybe you're thinking about right guard. It's a possibility. Tackle's absolutely in place still. Somebody to develop behind Lane Johnson. But what I decided to do was go Cooper DeJean. And this is kind of following the breadcrumbs that the Eagles have left for me. I could be getting trapped here, could be getting baited. But they interviewed a lot of the top corners at the combine. Maybe there's something to it. The Eagles always take these high-value positions in the first round. That's in the trenches, offensive tackle, defensive end. However, corner is a high-value position. And Cooper DeJean gives you a lot of versatility on the back end to play boundary. He can play field corner because he's athletic enough to do that. He can maybe even move back to safety. He can play the slot. He gives you flexibility to do whatever you want defensively, and that is invaluable. Really good player to the Eagles at 22. Texans at 23. Okay, stay with me here because I know the Texans fans might push back on this a bit because we know the defense needs to be improved. And listen, I'm in the Houston area. I hear the chatter. I live in Houston. I don't know why I said the area. I live in the city. But the defensive line could be something to target here. Maybe even corner. It could be in play as well. Maybe it's Edgerrin Cooper, a linebacker, at 23. Jerzon Newton is maybe the best interior defensive lineman available. Right? And then Leatu Latu is incredible value at 23. No question about it. No question. Maybe you'd even consider Chop Robinson as well. Who knows if Jonathan Grenard's going to be back in free agency. But I'm going to go Adonai Mitchell from Texas. Why am I doing that? We don't need a receiver. We have so many good ones. Well, I love Nico Collins. Tank Dell is a starting slot receiver for years to come. Outside of that, do you have a bona fide number 2? Tough to say because Noah Brown's fine. Robert Woods maybe is fine. John Mechie's another slot guy probably. So, what do you do if you're the Texans? I think you go out and you try to get another piece for CJ Stroud to make your offense even more explosive, even more dynamic. Trying to cover Adonai Mitchell, who came in at 6'2" and change, 205 pounds, ran 4.34 in the 40, looked really solid in the on-field drills for the most part as well. Tape at Texas is very good. Number 23 is really good value for Adonai Mitchell, and he continues to build on a strength. If we want CJ Stroud to be an MVP, which he has the potential to be, go out and get him a big-time weapon. Adonai Mitchell, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, that's your trio of the future, and I don't think you can be upset about that. It is a really talented receiver class, so you could pass on one here and go with an edge like Leatu Latu or Chop Robinson, or a defensive tackle like Jerzon Newton, or maybe even Darius Robinson as well, right? But I'm going Adonai Mitchell, hook him. He had an amazing combine, and maybe that pushes him into the top 25 comfortably. Maybe even higher than this. Maybe his range starts at 15 to the Colts. Really talented player. At number 24, have the Cowboys. And I think you want this to be a tackle. Tyron Smith is not going back to Dallas. It's being reported in 2024. Who's going to play left tackle? Well, it's a really talented tackle class. But I look at the left tackles on the board. Graham Barton probably moving inside. Tyler Guyton, probably a right tackle. Jordan Morgan might move inside to play guard. Is it Kingsley Suamataia here? Big time upside. But Jackson Powers Johnson got to you at 24. He's a starting center right away. I think he's maybe the best pure bet at 24 over a more developmental player in Tyler Guyton or Kingsley Suamataia. Certainly both in play. Graham Barton also in play to play center, but if you're going to take him, might as well take Jackson Powers Johnson at 24, was kind of my thinking. Wide receiver also would have been in play, but Adonai Mitchell just went off the board. Still could be a receiver, still could be something else, but JPJ I think is a pretty good pick there at 24. At number 25, Packers have some options. I'm going to end up going Kool-Aid McKinstry. Their secondary needs to improve. Kool-Aid McKinstry helps it out and play corner. And I talked about it, when I've made this fit before. Maybe even moves back to safety as well. Like, doesn't have to, but the potential is there, and I wouldn't hate it. At number 26, have the Tampa Bay Bucks. Laiatu Latu, somebody I think ends up being a top 20 pick. I just can't figure out how to get it done right now. The Rams make sense to me. The Jags could, depending on if Josh Allen, the edge rusher, is retained or not. Maybe even Seattle as well, right? I think the Saints could. I think the Broncos could, depending on if a quarterback gets to them or if they trade up. Laiatu Latu, so good. And apparently the medicals came back pretty good as well. I think he goes higher than this. I can't find a fit for it right now. It's a steal down the board. He is so good. Cardinals at 27. Going to be back-to-back edge rushers for me. I'm going with Chop Robinson from Penn State. Explosive doesn't even begin to describe it with Chop Robinson. He is twitched up, and he's not a super raw pass rusher. He has showcased the ability to show some moves. Just needs to develop a counter rush strategy or counter move strategy, because once the first thing doesn't work, doesn't really have a deep bag he can go into. He's flashed the swipe. I need to see a little bit more, particularly from his counter moves, because if the first thing isn't there, the elite guys like Laiatu Latu show you something else, and it works often. Chop Robinson hasn't shown the ability to do that yet, but he is a freak athlete, and we've seen these guys develop, especially from Penn State. Not going to make any comps there, but they're, freak athletes from Penn State. It's a safe bet a lot of the time. At 28, have the Buffalo Bills, and I still love the fit of Keon Coleman to them. I love Keon Coleman as a player. Obviously goes out, runs 4.61 of the 40. People freak out. Well, his 10-yard split was pretty good at 1.54. So he is explosive. He's a great athlete, and he had the fastest gauntlet drill of any receiver. He got up over 20 miles per hour in that drill. That's some big-time speed. And for Keon Coleman, I'm not super worried if he's going to separate from a corner 40 yards down the field. I'm really not worried about that, because at that point, it's either a coverage bust and you're wide open anyway, or the cornerback's in the play, even with the fastest of wide receivers. And he doesn't have to be the big-time deep threat to me, because Keon Coleman's big value down the field is that he will moss you. He will go up and get it, make highlight reel catches. He's incredible in that way. But what separates Keon Coleman from me is his ability after the catch. Again, he's returned kicks for Florida State, like I keep saying, but how many 6'3" or 6'4", 215-pound kick returners can you name? No one. It's Keon Coleman. I think he's a special player. I don't know if he's ever going to be a top receiver in the league, but at 28, you take the chance, and you get a bona fide outside stud in Keon Coleman. At number 29, we have the Lions. I love the fit of Graham Barton. Could potentially play center, could play guard, has experience really all across the Duke offensive line. Guard seems to be more of a big need for them right now. Frank Ragnow, is still the best center in the league now that Jason Kelce retired, or right in that conversation. Creed Humphrey, Tyler Linderbaum, all good. But Graham Barton, really a great player. Gives you flexibility on the O-line, and that's really, really valuable. Think of a player like Elton Jenkins for the Packers, but he can play center. Kind of fun. Ravens at 30. Thought about a lot of different things here. I mean, tackle is extremely tempting. Cornerback, tempting. In the end, I'm going for Mizzou's Darius Robinson. I think he's a great fit in their defense. He's 6'5". Yeah, 6'5". He came in at, I think, 285 pounds at the combine. And he can play 3-4 outside linebacker. Even at that weight, he's athletic enough to do so. Don't really want him dropping back in coverage, though. Make no mistake. He can play 3-4 defensive end. So when you talk about a guy that can play, as far down as the 3 technique, all the way out maybe to even a wide 9, because if you get this guy on a runway, he is going to bulldoze the tackle. Dominated at the Senior Bowl. I think he ends up being a first-round pick. And Jadeveon Clowney might not be back with the Ravens in 2024. Darius Robinson is certainly an excellent player. Not the same type of player as Clowney. Different, but the versatility, I think, is same lines of Barton, what makes him valuable. At number 31, have the 49ers. I'm going Tyler Guyton here. I think the Oklahoma tackle that the 49ers currently have has worked out pretty well. I'm not saying that Tyler Guyton is Trent Williams, but I think the connection's kind of fun. Tyler Guyton, of course, is transferred from TCU to be starting right tackle now. Super athletic, high upside, a little bit raw, but if you want to learn from anybody, Trent Williams is a pretty good choice to learn from. And again, starting right tackle sooner rather than later. At number 32, to finish out the first round of this mock draft, so many good players on the board. How is Johnny Newton still available? Of course, Troy Franklin, Ennis Rakestraw, Ladd McConkey, Zach Frazier, Kamari Lassiter, Kingsley Suamataia could be in that range. Edgerrin Cooper, maybe. Well, I'm going to continue down the board to show my Texas bias. I'm going Xavier Worthy. Now, am I doing this just because he ran 4.21? Yes. I think he's a really good player. I don't think he's wide receiver 4 in this class. I don't think he's wide receiver 5. Those guys are off the board. Is he wide receiver 6? Well, Keon Coleman is off the board for me. But for Xavier Worthy, he's a big-time deep threat that also can work underneath. He's explosive and fast, but he's also twitchy. Came in at pretty light, 165 pounds, but 166-pound Hollywood Brown was also a first-round pick, went even higher than this for the Chiefs. So you already have Patrick Mahomes tweeting about the 4.2 140 as it happened, the 4.25 as well, I should say. Xavier Worthy can absolutely fly. The hands were a question in 2022 because he played with a broken hand. Now, I don't know if he's ever going to put on significant weight. Devontae Smith didn't. Hollywood Brown didn't, to my knowledge. But Xavier Worthy can absolutely fly. His hands are pretty good unless it's a contested catch situation. But at 4.21 speed, how often are they going to be contested? So, I mean, still pretty often. But he's got exceptional speed and can catch. 2022, bit of an outlier. I had a not-so-great game against BYU in 2023, but Worthy has shown a history of production, can track the deep ball as well as anybody. The hands are pretty good, but he's not going to win a lot of jump balls for you. That's just who he is. But can get open, can separate, and can get deep down the field, can run after the catch. Is he a first-round pick? Yeah, maybe not, but I think he's going somewhere on day 2 if he's not, so why not at number 32? We have surprises in the first round all the time. How about the guy that ran 4.21 the week after the combine? Am I going to do this for the next mock draft? I don't know, but I'm doing it today. Subscribe if you're new. I'll see you tonight for the Falcons franchise offseason stream. Take it easy.